TBD. I mean, the different blockchains and different coins are designed differently. So like what you're buying when you're buying each individual coin is a bit different. The two prominent ones, of course, are Bitcoin and Ether. In those cases, it's more well defined. And with Bitcoin, of course, you're buying a version of like digital gold. With Ether, you're buying more like fuel or oil or gasoline is what I would, kind of, make an analogy to. That's fueling the Ethereum system. When you move down the list, to number 67, 68, no, the layperson probably isn't going to have a strong view of what those are. It's more speculative at this point, but the idea is that these are all different coins that are, sitting in different blockchains with different use cases, and what you're sort of buying into is the future of that use case. Could be NFTs, could be decentralized finance, could be any of, a half a dozen other use cases for cryptocurrencies. And at this stage, because really the only way for someone to get exposure to that is just through buying these coins, that's what a lot of people are doing.
Right. Hey, Lisa, I just want to go back to this issue, not just of trading, but when I was talking to Brian Armstrong this week, we talked about whether he should be comped again, or when the comparable companies should be, fintechs, the PayPals of the world, the Squares of the world, or where they should be the trading firms. And he said, look, we're a combination of all of these things. Where do you pin them ultimately, and where do you pin some of the old school finance companies that I imagine are going to try to get into this space, and then do they get re-rated as new comps, or does everything else come down to them long term?
Yeah, I think I'd say in the near term, for the next year or two, you can't get away from making some comparisons between Coinbase and traditional exchanges and brokerages, because that is the business model that they're currently operating in. However, our valuation, and really over the longer term, I'd say they're much more analogous to a Square or Shopify or PayPal, or even just broader kind of emerging technology companies. You can roll that back to Google and Facebook back in the earlier days of the internet, because what Coinbase is, and I'm sure Brian talks about this, right? What Coinbase is really evolving into is more like a platform, a technology platform for cryptocurrencies or for blockchain. So think like Microsoft Azure applied into the blockchain world to enable the whole ecosystem, developer ecosystem, and everything to work off these blockchains. That's a role that's much more techy in nature and much less financial in nature. So when we look at comps for them on valuation, we're thinking about, like I said, more the player. Looking back and thinking about players, looking at comparisons like a Shopify or a PayPal or a Square or players like that, much more than the traditional exchanges at this point. But from a revenue and business model perspective, that's much more what they look like.
I don't know, Andrew, we can't hear you at this point, so I'm going to step in. So a lot of this, there are a lot, but Bitcoin is very important, obviously, to Coinbase. I would think it's got the $1 trillion market cap. Do you see it eventually moving beyond digital gold and getting stable enough to where it becomes useful around the world in terms of payments and currency and everything else, and the future that people believe? Or will it still be kind of a store of value, maybe, or a savings account for people all around the planet? And isn't Coinbase's future dependent to some extent on it making that move to wider usages?
Yeah, Coinbase's future is definitely at this point dependent, like you said, because about 80% of their AUM is in either Bitcoin or Ether, and the majority of that is Bitcoin. So they are absolutely tied at the hip right now to Bitcoin. And their future is dependent on Bitcoin gaining more mainstream acceptance as an alternative asset class and investment class. Really, this concept of it going from the 1 trillion to 10 trillion or 11 trillion, more similar to a gold or other commodities. I'm personally not a believer in, that we're going to start buying our Starbucks with Bitcoin. No, I think that's a role that will be filled by stable coins like the USD coin or, the US dollar coin, or central bank digital currencies. But in some markets, like super high inflation, like Venezuela, there are absolutely use cases of people using Bitcoin for a mode of transacting in order to avoid the extreme inflation in the fiat currency, which is that's kind of where that use case can come into play.
If people forget that we're at low inflation here, but there are places around the globe when people do have smartphones and where inflation is still just off the charts, and you'd actually would want to have this. And then there's the store of value aspect as well. Well, we'll see. Lisa, thanks. You must do a lot of, you got to do a lot of background on this. You only got, 59 more of these little things and it's growing every day. So keep us updated.
Yeah. All right. Terrific. Thanks, Joe.
All right. Lisa Partner at Ellis Nathanson. No.
That's how I think it should be.
Yeah,
Start with
exactly.
the Ellis.
That's what you think. All right. Ellis Nathanson. All right. See you later. And